What's up, everybody? This is Charlie from Charisma on Command, and what I do and we do at Charisma on Command is help people be their most charismatic, confident selves in the moments that matter the most, and that can be anywhere from the boardroom to the bar. So what I want to cover today is something that I get asked about a lot, and it is group interactions. People seem to struggle much more with group interactions than they do with one-on-one. Now, the question that I get goes something like this. It's, okay, so when I'm one-on-one with people, I feel like I can really connect. I feel like if I get 5 minutes, 10 minutes into the conversation, there's a really good chance that that person is going to want to see me again. But add 3, 4, 5 people to the mix, and all of a sudden things change, right? Now I'm falling behind. I feel like I'm hesitating. I'm clamming up. I'm thinking of things that I should have said 3 minutes ago, and I just lose track of where everyone else is going. So how can I avoid that? How can I make it so that I can connect with people as well in a group setting as I can one-on-one? Because guess what? Lots of things occur in group settings, whether it's socially or at work. So that's what I want to touch on today. All right, I want to talk about how to get into conversation with groups, right? So you're not that lone person standing there waiting to be accepted. How to bring other people into the groups that you're in so that they're not in that situation as well. So we're going to talk about introductions. I also want to talk about, really important, how to hold the attention of a group. This is something that people struggle with so much. One-on-one, there's that verbal ping pong. You go back and forth, question, answer. In a group, it's so much more dynamic, and people tend to struggle with that. So I want to help you to hold the attention of a group so you don't feel like you're a wallflower. We're also going to touch on nonverbal cues, all this other stuff, but basically the entire point of this is to add another layer to your conversational skills so that if you feel comfortable one-on-one, now you can take that into a group setting. Now, what this course is not, very specifically, this is not a general conversational primer. It's not what topics to talk about. It's not how to not run out of things to say. That is stuff I have covered elsewhere in courses called Expert Conversation, Conversational Mastery. I switch the names up all the time depending on how I'm feeling, but I've touched on that stuff. So if you are interested in that, you're going, oh no, like I need to do the one-on-one as well, check out that module first, right? That's going to be much more helpful. But if you either have seen that before and feel comfortable there, or you're like, you know what, I'm set. What I need is for someone else to help me get that group feeling the same as I feel one-on-one, you're in the right spot. So let's get started.
So I think it's really helpful to learn through example, which is why I want to go now and sort of recap what we've learned and see it in action via Will Smith in a group interaction. So the first thing to look at right now is going to be introductions. And what I want you to look for is the energy that Will Smith walks in compared to the other people. Fine, cordial, walk to the couch, nothing special.
He always likes my fire, it's Gary Barlow!
Big smile, gracious bow, sort of races his way to the couch. Now look at Will Smith. Look at the energy that he brings and the time that he takes making his way over as he says hi to Graham Norton, the host, the audience, and then finally the guys on the couch.
Here comes the man in black, it's Will Smith! A level of excitement in the room. Yeah.
So Will Smith's walk-in, and finally I do want to point out that he does say hi finally to everybody on the couch, takes about twice as long as the other guys, if not more. Now, that can be off-putting to people if done wrong. If you're just an attention hog and you're talking the whole time and trying to slow down the pace of conversation and just dragging everything back to you, that can backfire. The reason that Will Smith is so likable is because he does it from a place of 1, positive energy, 2, humor, and 3, he supports other people when they crack jokes or when they speak. And that's what I want to highlight for the rest of this video.
Okay, we're here for a while. We're caught. Now, I'm already
understanding you all know each other.
Yes.
'Cause
Yes.
You guys was at the Millennium concert.
Yeah. The last time we were together was at the Millennium.
But we worked together classically on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
And Mr. Barlow, you know as well, don't you?
Yes, well, we had I don't know
We
if
were
you...
drinking and things happened, and we simply never talked about it.
So importantly, he's the first person to crack a joke. But potentially more importantly, he's also the first person to laugh huge, which is what you'll see. This is what I mean by being supportive of other people.
Almost that story.
I wasn't going to mention that. I was going to mention something else.
So people feel good around him because they crack small jokes, and he's just such a positive person that without faking it, he's able to comfortably laugh heartily. That makes people feel really, really good. And again, I want to highlight that support just going forward into the conversation. Tom Jones is now going to talk about why he loves music, and you'll hear Will Smith in the background saying absolutely yes and nodding his head along.
What keeps you going?
Well, the love of it, I just love singing, and I'm getting paid for it, which
That helps.
there's nothing better than that when you do something you love.
If you hear Will Smith, he said absolutely there. You'll hear him again and see him when they cut to the wide shot of just nodding and encouraging Tom as he talks about this.
Yeah.
And then you can. It's like a hobby. You turn a hobby into a profession, and so it's not like work at all. I was asked the other day. They said.
So there you go. And Will Smith does this throughout the conversation. I just wanted to pull this out to show you that though he dominates by far, if you go through this, he probably speaks 50% or more of the time. He's constantly cracking jokes, even cutting people off. There's never any resentment because he is so supportive when other people are speaking. Now, I want to show you what that enables him to do as he goes further into the conversation. Let's see if we can get this here. So they start talking about Independence Day. People have really only been answering in 2-3 sentence blurbs up to this point. This is the first time somebody's going to take a long or a longer story, and of course it's Will Smith. But you'll notice that people are completely focused on him because he hasn't been dominating the attention in sort of a tyrannical way. He's been doing it by spreading the love, making other people feel funny and heard before he goes ahead and really does wind up dominating most of the conversational time.
They took it all to a different
absolutely.
level.
Yes.
That must have been amazing for you, for your family, your parents. To
Yes,
see,
that was the first movie. Independence Day came out and broke all of these box office records, and it was huge.
So if you look, people are paying very close attention to him as he speaks, and it's because he's been supportive. Now, he's about to tell a story, and this is a huge, very important thing. When a lot of people go to tell stories in group conversations, they try to rush them in there. And because people aren't paying extremely close attention, they rush through to their climax and then look around, and it didn't hit like they wanted to. Notably, Will Smith first captures the attention of his audience by being supportive, funny, and positive. And now when he's telling a story, he can do it much more slowly to make it really impactful and all the more.
And I remember that Monday morning, I was in Los Angeles and my family was in Philadelphia. So, it was 6 a.m. in Philadelphia and 3 a.m. in Los Angeles. And my father calls me, I'm, hey, hello. And he said, man, you see these numbers? I said, yeah, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I didn't say anything. He said, man, remember when I told you there's no such thing as luck? I was like, yeah, Dad. Remember when I told you there's no such thing as luck? It's only what you make. Dad, yes, I remember. Remember when I told you you put your mind to it? It ain't no luck. It's what you create. I said, yeah, Dad, I remember. He said, man, that's bullshit. You the luckiest motherfucker.
So hopefully you caught there that he slows down on that beat 3 times as he's telling the story, right? He doesn't rush through it. If he did, it would not be as impactful. What I want you to pay attention to, I'm going to go through this one more time, is how he splits his attention between the people he's telling the story to. And notably, since Graham asked him the question, a lot of his eye contact and attention is focused on Graham. He also speaks to the audience, but then at the end includes the guys on the couch with him, so nobody feels left out.
I'm in Los Angeles, and my father calls me, I'm, hey, hello, and he said, man, you see these numbers?
So this is Graham, clearly.
I said, yeah, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I didn't say anything. He said, man, remember when I told you there's no such thing?
I was looking at the audience.
I was like, Remember when I told you there's no such thing as luck? It's only what you make. Dad, yes, I remember. Remember when I told you you put your mind to it? It ain't no luck. It's what you create. I said, yeah, Dad, I remember. He said, man, that's bullshit. You the luckiest motherfucker.
So, importantly here, and again, you can see people are cracking up. He does split his attention between the different people, right? He's got the guys on the one side, he's got the host Graham, and he's got the audience. But he doesn't do it rapid fire. I see so many people telling stories in group, bouncing super quickly between the people that are listening. And what happens is when you can't look at someone for long enough to basically communicate, I'm telling a story to you, right? Pay attention. They sort of, their mind wanders. You've got to spend at least a couple of seconds looking at the person for them to be included. And this is true whether you're speaking to an audience and you're looking at different individuals in a giant auditorium, or if it's just 3 people around you. You bounce between them, but for long enough for that person to start to give you feedback, to laugh, to nod, so that you have formed a personal connection with them.
So the first thing that I like to do with groups is actually not the thing that comes first. It's not the introduction. It's the most important part, right? It's actually getting in there, because what people struggle with in group conversations that is much easier one-on-one is finding their spot. So the first thing that I like to do with groups is actually not the thing that comes first. It's not the introduction. It's the most important part, right? It's actually getting in there, because what people struggle with in group conversations that is much easier one-on-one is finding their spot where they can enter into the conversation. What you might have found, and I certainly have found in my own life, is that when you're not feeling comfortable, it can feel like you're butting into conversation or like you're stepping on the end of other people's sentences. And so to avoid that, you just stay out. Or even worse, it's almost like you're playing a game of chicken with someone where you start talking and they start talking and it's like, oh, who goes next? Oh, okay. And then you can just feel like, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm going to shut up. So this is a concept that I call finding the scene. The goal in any conversation with groups is to, well, not the entire goal, obviously you want to listen as well, but when it comes to speaking, you need to find the scene. You need to find the appropriate place to get in. I'm going to talk a lot about how to do this, but the first thing that is going to help is just to see it in action. So I want to go first to a clip.
So this will be really quick. All that you need to look out for is how, after the audience begins to laugh, about 6 seconds after I start the video, how Russell starts to say something, thinks better of it, and waits until the laughter dies down. So just pay attention. It's going to be really quick.
You and Russell Brand, you are going to offend a large portion of society together, and it's not a good combo, and I can't bear to watch for my nerves.
If you kind of watch much of Emily Blunt's stuff, then you should know that this is the real risk.
I'll play it again real quick, close to that spot where he starts to think of it, which is right about here. You see him tilt his head up like he's going to speak, but he waits again until that audience laughter dies down and he can get in and be heard.
Are going to offend a large portion of society together, and it's not a good combo, and I can't bear to watch for my nerves.
If you kind of watch much of Emily Blunt's stuff, then you should know that this is the real risk.
So Russell Brand, performer that he is, has this intuitive sense of when to tell his joke. He knows that if he jumps in right when the audience has hit a pitch of laughter, his joke is not going to get heard. So he wisely waits till it's on the downward way and then jumps in with his own joke. Downward way, that's such a ridiculous. Decrescendo is probably the better word. In any event, what we need to do is we need to find the scenes in group interactions and get in there. Now, we're not on live television, but there's a similar dynamic. So from a very scientific perspective, what is the scene? Well, the scene is typically in Western hemispheres. It's about a half second long when people have finished a thought. Now, they might not be completely done with their story, but there's almost a bit of an invitation to participate. It also tends to correspond with a change in intonation. So if I ask you a question, I go, wait, where are we going? There's that upward inflection at the end. You know that that's the end of my question. If I say, no, he told us we need to stay here, there's a downward intonation or a downward inflection at the end of that sentence. That indicates to people that I am finished with my thought. Now, that said, the point is not to start listening for inflections and intonations to go, okay, now is my time to jump in. The point is to realize that in one-on-one conversation, people are jumping on the end, or honestly in the middle, constantly of one another's thoughts. They're not even necessarily finding the seam. When somebody starts to tell a story, somebody adds to it, and it becomes this mutually created thing. So people who are wallflowers, what they need to find how to do is not just to get in the seam, but to maintain attention once they do. This is so huge. This is the point that I need to touch on. This is what Russell Brand did. If you're going to jump in when there's raucous laughter around, you need to command attention like a boss. And it can be very hard because there's 3 people vying for it. So step 1 is don't come in on the most difficult times. If you try to speak while somebody's hitting the climax of their story, 1, it's rude of you, and 2, you're not going to be able to capture the group's attention. You need to pay attention for those times where there's that little decrescendo, right? The story has slowed a bit and you can chime in, right? Or maybe the story is ended. There's that short low between thoughts and you can get in there. That is the time to get in. Secondly, you need to maintain attention. This is so huge. Now, to maintain attention, here's the biggest way. Volume, right? If you've ever been in a group with your friends and you're talking and then some just booming voice behind you comes up, it stops you. You start to look at that person. Another thing that's going to do that is conviction. I talk about this in some of the other modules, but conviction when speaking is huge. And what it sounds like is people who finish their thoughts. If I believe that what I have to say have value, I'm not going to let someone run me off my conversational track mid-sentence. If they start to speak, I'm likely to at least get to the end of my thought. So this is what a lot of people do. This is the wrong way, without conviction. Somebody comes in, say that I'm talking, and they start to interrupt. I say, yeah, so I was going to the mall the other day, and he just, no, go ahead. They trail off. They get cut off. Now, you can still be interrupted. I'm going to show you an example of this, but much stronger is, yeah, I was going to the mall the other day, and they jump in here, and I saw my dad, and I was so confused. Like, why was he here? No, go ahead. Say what you were saying. You finish the end of your thought. What that communicates, 1, most people will not run you off your conversational track if you continue to the end of your sentence. And 2, if you do, it is subconsciously communicated to the rest of the group that they should not interrupt you mid-sentence. You can still get in, you can still have that playful banter, but not mid-sentence. This is true vice versa as well. Don't interrupt mid-sentence. Wait till there's that seam to get into. And of course, lastly, the biggest thing is gesticulations. One of the best ones that I've seen to get in is literally the hand raise. My friend does this all the time. There'll be people telling a story, and almost like a first grade, will be like, ooh, ooh, ooh. And everyone starts to look at him, and then he starts to speak and share what he wanted to say. It can sound crazy and juvenile, but just that indication, right? It can be the hand raise, it can be an eyebrow, it can be a nodding smile. Any sort of nonverbal thing that you can communicate to the speaker primarily, as well as the rest of the group, that you are going to see, that is going to help you capture and maintain more attention when you talk so that you don't get run off your track. So again, I think examples are the best way to do this. And I've got a good one and a bad one all in the same thing. I really love this clip. So that's what I want to show next. So one of the things that I love about that clip is it's not only is Will Smith really fun to listen to, but he's also such an active and supportive listener. And I know I started with, okay, how do you get into conversation? But obviously it's a conversation, right? Even in a group interaction, a really important part is listening, because as you add more people, you're probably going to spend more time listening. The thing is, it's done differently when it's done well than it is in a one-on-one interaction. Because the truth is, in a group setting, people's attention is divided, right? If you're talking to me one-on-one, basically you've got 100% of my attention. I'm looking at you when you're speaking and when I'm speaking. But in a group setting, if I'm telling a story, I've got to tell to this side of the audience, you, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, no matter how many people, even in an auditorium, it's the same thing. My attention is divided, whether I'm speaking or whether I'm listening. So if you want to like still be an active participant in the group interaction while you're listening, which you're going to be doing for an increasing amount of time as you add more people, you need to listen very overtly, right? This is the difference between, think of like a TV or a movie actor and a Broadway actor, right? In TV and on movies, they've got a camera, they can do the close-up. Actors have the luxury of doing these very subtle things with their face that is going to get captured, right? Because everyone can see it. They've got their zoomed in right on them. On Broadway, if you're acting and you try to do subtle things, people in the back of the house are not going to see it. They're not going to pick it up. So everything is much bigger, right? The expressions are bigger. The noises are louder. Everything that you do becomes bigger. And this needs to be true of how you listen in a group interaction. So, quick story, I've got basically I'm thinking of two friends, but there's two types of people that do this. And you probably know some yourself, and maybe you can even say which one you are. I've got one buddy who, when he listens, he's very focused on you. His eye contact is solid, but there's not much going on in his face, right? There's not a lot of indication that the parts that he likes or doesn't like. He sort of just slowly nods and absorbs everything. It can even leave you at times thinking, being like, wait, is he getting this? But you do realize it because he's responding to you in a one-on-one conversation that yes, he is listening, you have his attention, and you're interacting. I have another buddy who is the most easy guy to laugh I've ever met. I mean, you tell a joke, and he could be 2 rooms away, and if he hears it, he's going to burst into laughter. It's an awesome trait generally. But which one of these people do you think fares better in group conversation? Now, based on what we just said, it should be obvious. It's the person who is listening in a much more dynamic. If you're the type of person that is listening, going like this, just kind of absorbing and nodding, you are getting no attention while anyone else speaks. So if other people are talking 70% of the time, people just forget about you for 70% of the time. Now, if you're Will Smith and you are going, right, and you're laughing so big every time somebody tells a joke, or you're like my other buddy, people are still aware that you're there. They're not going to forget about you. In fact, you'll start to notice. They start to look at you when they tell stories because you're a supportive listener. They start to include you more. So if they start to tell a little bit of an inside joke, they'll make sure that they catch you up. This active listening piece, I hope you saw it with Will Smith, is so huge. So the concrete steps are to, 1, be more expressive in your face. Somebody looks at you, give them some love back. We've all given speeches where we look out to the audience and it looks like there's just a sea of dead people. But you find that one person who is like nodding along with you, and that's your lifeline. Be that person for other people. So when they look your way as they're telling a story, expressive with your eyes, nod, feedback, smile. Very, very helpful, and it's going to make them pay attention to you. Side note, where the speaker is paying attention, that is where the group is paying attention as well in many cases. So if you got a little thing going between you and the speaker, guess what? Other people are paying attention as well. So you want to get expressive with the face. You want to do some active listening. Yeah, oh my God. Ask questions. Wait. What happened next? Build their story. Help them along as they go. And then, of course, laugh easily. This is just good for life. It's going to make you feel better. It's going to help in groups. This is just good to do. So if you can, don't fake anything, but don't think that it's cool to be a tough laugh, right? I know that I dealt with this for a long time. I used to think, you know what? I have a sophisticated sense of humor. I don't laugh at the stupidest things. And I realized that is ridiculous. I was holding myself back when I could have just been enjoying myself more. So if you're in that boat, allow yourself to laugh more. And you'll see that even in group interactions, when you're not necessarily telling a story or speaking or dominating the spotlight, you're still included in an integral way. And that's really, really cool. I want to move now to storytelling tips in groups. Now, let me just make it clear. This is not the storytelling module. There's another hour on how to tell stories. This is the differences between one-on-one and group stories. If you want that other stuff, check out Charisma University. That is the place for it. So, in a group setting, I was actually lucky enough not very long ago to have the perfect time to test this. I was thinking a lot about this module, what I was going to talk about, and I was invited out to like a 13-person dinner. And not just that, it was one of those at those big circular tables where they have like the spinning jenny, you put your food down, it spins around, I think that's what they're called. A Lazy Susan, maybe, Spinning Jenny. I don't know. In any event, it was at this Asian restaurant. I was like, this is perfect. I'm going to get to just be the scientist, sit back, and watch how people start to captivate the attention of groups like this. Because we were all friends, but I knew that some people were going to start to get more attention than others. Chief among them is my roommate, co-founder, Ben. So I was paying attention to how he captured attention in the group. And I saw something that went actually very against what I expected. What I was expecting was somebody to just take over, start speaking loudly, right? Do all the things that I'd mentioned, raise your hand, and then the group would pay attention. And what I saw and have seen since is something very different. The way that you capture the attention of a larger group and that you wind up being that person who is telling the story to everyone is actually through smaller sections typically. Now, there are occasions where somebody will like just volunteer. You go, oh my God, hey, everybody listen, you have to hear the story that Charlie has. But the way that I saw it arise organically is Ben would be talking to one person, you know, maybe part of the way across the table from him, and he'd be speaking loudly, dynamically, that other person would laugh, and he'd be giving his full attention to that person. He wasn't like spreading it around, wasn't trying to tell everybody. And what happened is as people's conversations sort of, you know, died down, dripped off, they would look over and they'd see that these two were having a really engaging conversation and they'd start to pay attention and listen, right? And I watched this happen and soon it was like the entire table had just started this, had, you know, broken down from 3 or 4 separate conversations to everybody listening to this one conversation. And I thought, isn't that interesting? And then I actually saw the reverse of it, which is when people tried to address, and I actually did this, I tried to address the entire group. I wanted to see how it would go. So I tried to let me get everybody's attention. And what actually happens is when other people are having conversations, I go, oh my God, you have to listen to this. So hold on, pay attention. It's like trying to wrangle cats, right? You grab one, you put it down, you go over, you get the other, and it just run off. So what you actually need to do if you are interested in, you know, having that sort of spotlight scenario, which by the way is not anything that's like narcissistic, it's just helpful when you're in a group interaction to speak and have the group listen. That enables them to learn about you and gives you a better chance of connecting. The way to do it is not by spreading your attention to everybody at the group immediately. The way to do it is by focusing on your little tribe, if you will, of people. And I did notice that Ben actually was speaking with one of the more gregarious people. Separate little scientific, semi-scientific test I did is when people would talk with those who were a little bit quieter, a little bit, you know, not necessarily in leadership positions in the group, this didn't work as well. It tended to be when two of the group, the more dynamic, loud, expressive people would start talking, other people would be pulled into that. So if you're interested in this, and you can even just watch it in your own friends or your own groups that you're in, the way that you capture the attention of everybody, again, is by focusing on one person and really reeling them in, right? So you hold eye contact with them. You let them know that you are telling a story and that they need to listen. If I start talking to you and start to try to rope other people in, I'm going to lose you. Now, what this does is create something really cool that is the opposite of what happens when you try to play to everybody right off the bat. If you're trying to play to everybody right off the bat, you're probably speaking and rushing your story. You're trying to get to the climax because you know that you need to like get their attention. And it sort of fizzles in your hands. You rush the story, all of a sudden the climax isn't as funny or as impactful, and then people aren't listening to you. You've lost cred with that group. On the other hand, when you start with one person and you hold their attention with your eye contact and by signifying to them that you guys are having a conversation, you up the volume and sort of invite other people in, you get to go slow. This is so important. In group conversations more than any other, if you rush your stories, you're doomed, right? If you start to try to get quick, here's the important part, boom, people are like, okay, that had no payoff. That was all just bluster and it's over. Versus if you can build it with one person and have other people come in because you're speaking loudly, that's perfect. Now, last thing, I said, you know, you're making eye contact with this initial person, you're signifying that you guys are having a conversation. As it becomes clear that more and more people have opted in to listening, not that you're going out and sort of like soliciting them from their conversations, but they're paying attention, then you can start to spread the eye contact around. But only when they've done it of their own volition because they've heard you guys laughing or being loud. So those are some group storytelling tips. I've seen these played out over and over and over again. And I constantly have to check myself, because the one that I am guilty of is trying to rush my stories when there's groups around. That is not going to pay off. If you rush to the punchline, you just kill the point of the story. You're much better off speaking to one person, taking your time, and having the rest of the group join you. This next little tip I actually picked up from a good buddy of mine. He does just naturally a lot of this stuff, right? Very jealous of him. But I saw this and I felt it had an immediate effect on me, and I've seen it since, and I wanted to share it with you. So here's what it is. A lot of people, once they start to do that, say that you're telling a story and the whole group starts to join in, they get overwhelmed by the feedback, because now there's people asking questions, blah, blah, blah. They get derailed, and then the story sort of spins out of control and other people start talking, and it never really hits the stride that it could. What you need to do when you are speaking and getting feedback is be a bit non-reactive with that feedback. Now, what I mean that I saw my buddy do is I was listening to him tell a story in a group, and we're good friends, so we cut each other off. we constantly are like stepping on the end, like finishing each other's sentences, and I started to do that in a group setting. And instead of immediately just allowing me to do that, which we might do one-on-one, he just sort of nodded, smirked, and continued talking. This is the best way to handle it. And I was like, oh, like he's telling a story. I should listen and not interrupt. And what that did was, because I got that look and the nod and the smirk, I said, oh my God, are you going to get to this part? You need to tell him this. He's like, did that to me. I still didn't feel like I was completely put off. He wasn't rude to me or anything. I had that acknowledgement, but I didn't derail his story. And again, I played with this. I've seen it in other groups. When you are telling stories and you're going to get bombarded by questions, looks, you cannot possibly respond to every single one. This mistake. They start to gather all this tension from doing the things that we're talking about, and then are just torn apart in different directions. What you need to do is keep on the track of what you were saying, acknowledge other people with a look, a smirk, a thumbs up, and continue going. Now, if what they said is helpful, or they come in over the top loud and you can't sort of deal with it, you got to roll with the interruption. And you've seen Will Smith do this when he's interrupted by Jaden, right? Jaden comes in talking about his quarter pants, and he goes with that joke. Typically speaking, though, when you're talking, other people are going to be murmuring, and honestly, if you look at the most charismatic people, they don't directly with their words address what they're saying more than 60, 70% of the time. It's really most often that they continue on their story and maybe give them a smirk or nod or something like that. So just one more tip for when you do start to capture the attention of the group, that you don't squander it. So now, I promised we'd get here eventually to the introductions part. Now, the difference with groups is, and I don't know why people do this, but when most people are introduced to a group, they have this weird little thing they do where they walk up and they sort of like say hi, wave, because they're, I guess, nervous about saying hi to everybody, or I really don't know. But this is so wrong. And if you remember from the last thing that we talked about, you can't just address a group. A group is not a cohesive unit. You need to address individuals. Now, if you ever look at a dog in a dog park, right, the dog doesn't walk up to one other dog and sniff his butt. He walks up to every single dog and sniffs his butt. And I hope you remember this, because people are the same way. If you want to be accepted into a group, say that you're at a networking event and you walk up, what you do is you walk up and you shake every single person's hand, even if there's 5 of them, right? Now, the one exception for this that I've seen if you're like networking is when there's somebody speaking and a bunch of people carefully listening. There's a clear power difference. There's a person who works at the company and then the 4 or 5 students there who are listening. But in any sort of thing where it's, people are mingling, you need to introduce yourself to everyone. So a very simple thing, and I've said this a bazillion times. People always ask, well, what do I say? I'm at this event, I'm at work, I'm in a bar. My favorite thing to do whenever I'm introducing myself to an individual or to a group, the easiest thing, this works on college campuses, it works within your company, it works at networking events, it works in bars, it works everywhere, is to walk up to whoever you'd like to speak to and say, hey, I don't think I've met you yet. I'm Charlie. And you just say your name instead of Charlie. It's really, really simple, but it's a friendly social thing to do, and it immediately gets you into the group. So if you see a couple people standing and you're at a networking event, the thing that I like to do is, if you can, make eye contact with one of them, right? and you want to address that person first. So as you're coming into a group, you make eye contact, you walk up, say, hey, what's up? I don't think I've met you guys yet. I'm Charlie. Charlie, Ashley, what's up? Ashley, Dave, Charlie. You shake everyone's hand, and now you are part of the group. Again, just a super simple thing to think of, but a lot of people forget this. You do not address the group as this singular unit. You need to address individuals, whether you're speaking to them or introducing yourself. That is how you become part of them. One little wrinkle that I want to add here, and that I've seen happen, and it sort of throws people for a loop, is they're talking to one person one-on-one, and they're feeling comfortable. But then what happens is a friend or a colleague or somebody comes in and says hi to that friend. There's hugs, there's handshakes, oh my God, I haven't seen you, how are you doing? And all of a sudden they find themselves on the outskirts of a group conversation. What do you do in that circumstance? It's actually not that complicated. First thing that I like to do is, if they haven't completely shut me off with their body language, right, they don't have their back to me, the easiest thing is to just stick with what I said. You look at the person who just came in, because they've sort of got eyes on you, go, give them 5 seconds to give the hugs and all that stuff, and you go, hey, what's up? I don't think I've met you yet. I'm Charlie. Really easy. Now, if they have boxed you out, and now they're like one-on-one, and your friend is not facing you, and they're looking straight at your friend, what you need to do is you basically need to get the friend to bring you into the group. Very simple as well. Hand on the shoulder, touch the arm, whatever, and go, hey, I actually don't think that I've met your friend yet. Do you mind introducing me? Very, very simple, but effective, right? You don't want to find yourself in that situation where you feel cut out of a group and now you're like, oh God, I've got no one to talk to. That little fix will get you back into any conversation where there's been an interruption. And I will say, just to highlight, it's very, very important. I talked about introducing yourself when you approach a group. Whenever someone else comes in, you want to go out of your way to make sure that you get that handshake, you have that introduction. Because if the group ever gets to a point where somebody else who, say, is in more of a leadership position, or a lot of people come in and you've not introduced yourself to them, you've effectively cut yourself out of that newly formed group. So make sure whenever someone comes in, handshake, whatever, now they have accepted you, you are part of the group. It's the dog sniffing butt thing, but it's very, very important. We've touched on a couple of different variations of how group introductions can go, but let's switch positions now, right? Now you're not the outsider and there's 4 friends who you don't know. Let's say that you're the guy who's getting in, your friend grabs you on the shoulder, goes, hey, what's up, man? And you were in a conversation that you're being pulled away from. The same sort of mentality applies, which is you want to be the one forming and facilitating conversation in the group. The person who does that is by default the group leader, and a lot of cool things accrue from that. You get more invitations to stuff, people are more interested in what you have to say. It just gives you an opportunity to connect more with more people. So, say that your friends come up to you, right, and all of a sudden there's now 2 people who, maybe one from your work, one from a friend circle. What do you do? Step 1 is do what you wish they would do for you, which is introduce them. But you want to add something to it. In fact, you're better off thinking of yourself almost like an MC. What you want to do is talk these people up to one another, right? You want to give them conversational topics that they can talk about. Right now, I've got my friend Ben is going, he's going out with 2 different groups of friends. He's got one group that we know who we go out sort of to the nightlight with, and he's actually got another friend coming who he does MMA with, mixed martial arts. So these are 2 very, very different worlds. If Ben just stands there and tries to talk to this guy about MMA and this guy about nightlife, they might have nothing in common. And what I know that Ben is going to do, though, is to facilitate interaction between them. Tell him what the cool things going on in his life are. So he's going to say, oh, my God, this guy's so awesome. He's the best coach ever. He's been helping me with, this, that, and another thing in terms of my fighting. We've got this fight coming up. I actually think it's at this casino that you work at, right? So he's building commonalities between these 2 people who on the surface might not have it and might feel awkward speaking to one another. That's your job. Even when people aren't from different worlds, what you want to be thinking is, okay, either from a personality standpoint or even a professional one, how can these people enjoy the interaction with one another? Can they help one another? Are they complementary? Is this guy hilarious and I need to let him know so they can banter? Is he a genius and is really into talking about, whatever, sci-fi novels and this guy has the same sort of interest? you want to be thinking of yourself like an MC when other people come in. Because if you're brokering introductions to other people, cool stuff happens. Not only do you have, that interaction will go better, but people start to do the same thing for you. So think, when your buddy comes in, what's fascinating about him, right? What is he best at? What is he great at? Is he super smart? Is he really talented at something else? Is he your best loyal friend? What is it? And you want to start to really hype people up to one another, hopefully in a way that is drawing on truth, so that their conversation can take off and do much better. I want to touch now on clickiness. We've all had this experience, right? Where you're with a group of people who have known each other for so long, who have a ton of shared history. I want to touch now on clickiness. We've all had this experience, right? Where you're with a group of people who have known each other for so long, who have a ton of shared history, and all of a sudden it turns into like a love fest between them where they're telling old stories and just basically interacting with one another while you watch from the outside, even though you're technically all part of the same group. Now, the reason that I wanted to include this is because a good buddy of mine had this experience, right? He was with another friend of ours, and that friend's college buddies were in town. So it was 4 guys from the same university and my other friend who did not go there. And he said what happened is it quickly turned into, a love fest from that college, right? I'm just going to call it Harvard, right? So then all these guys get together and they're just talking about old Harvard stories and how things used to be, and do you remember that girl? And my friend is sitting there thinking, I don't know how it used to be. I don't know that girl. What the hell are we talking about? How am I going to deal with this all weekend long? So my advice to him and to you, if you ever find yourself in this situation, is actually twofold. First off, you've got to come in bigger, right? I saw this. I had another friend who was just a loud, big presence. He gesticulated big. He talked loudly. When he said hi, he grabbed your hand and smiled big. If he was ever in a group of people who had shared history, they made sure to include him in everything. So they'd be telling a story and they'd go, oh, you don't realize. So this girl is actually a friend of mine who grew up, and they'd give him the backstory so he could participate. So step one is, if you're a big presence, people will not forget to include you. Unfortunately, what they do forget to include are people who sort of shrink. They are smaller presences. So step one, loud gesticulation, smile, and positive energy. That way people won't leave you out. Now, if you do find yourself, you've forgotten to do that stuff and you're being left out, the way to handle it, there's a couple ways. First one is to sort of make a joke. Rather than just simply asking, hey, wait, who is that person? Who is that person? I've found myself there. And it's a drain on them and it's a drain on you. So what you can do is sort of in a joking way, say these guys are talking about Harvard. Like, oh my God, you remember that time? Be like, what my friend can do who didn't go to Harvard, be like, yeah, Harvard, man, those were the days, crazy times, crazy times. And in a joking way, he calls to light the fact that he has no idea what they're talking about. And so what typically happens in that situation is people laugh, and then they catch him up on the backstory and try not to be so cliquey. The other thing you can do that's more proactive is to find ways to relate. Now, you can do this in any situation, one-on-one, group conversation, whatever. You can relate to someone in Swahili, assuming that you speak the same language, who is, I guess, from wherever they are from, Swaziland, I'm not really sure. But you can relate to someone who has a very different life history to you, not because you've both gone hunting in the Sahara, but because you guys are human beings and we have similar motivations. So if you're talking to someone who went to a different school and has a different group of friends, and they're talking about the college glory days, sure, you can't relate to that group of friends. But what you can do is tell a story about your college years. Maybe you have some crazy stories. Maybe there was another time in your life where you were going out and doing ridiculous stuff that you want to share. Maybe your college experience was the opposite of theirs, and you can chime in with how bookish you were and how much you loved whatever, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, whatever is cool at the time. But you can take something, some element of that story, and relate to it in your own. That way, you don't need that shared history to participate in the group. And when you can do that and you're chiming in, people will start to pick topics that are not so exclusive. They'll start to talk about things that include everyone in the group, assuming that you assert yourself as part of the group. And that's really what the point of this is. If you ever find yourself on the outside of the group and they're not purposely being mean, or you're not just like the mean girls in high school who are purposely excluding you, The reason is that you have not asserted yourself as part of that group, either with the introduction handshakes, the positive energy, the loudness, the basically saying, hey, include me in this, guys. That is really important. So when you find yourself on the outside, make sure that you take it upon yourself to get back in by relating to something that they're saying, and you'll find that more often than not, for the rest of the time, you're included.
And the person to focus on here is going to be primarily Will Smith. Now, I will say I'm going to have to play this clip a number of times because in group dynamics, so much is occurring at the same time, and it occurs very, very quickly, so it can be hard to perceive what's happening. But honestly, this still that I'm going to start it with is a great example because the first thing to notice is that throughout this entire breakdown, you'll see that Will Smith is the most enthusiastic supporter and the biggest laugher at just about any joke that anyone makes. He's not faking it. He's genuinely just really, he finds everything they say humorous. So what this does in a group context is it makes him a force. It makes him someone that you notice even when he is not speaking. So I'm just going to show you that pretty quickly to start.
But because, you know, the success has been phenomenal for you. And I read something about that you Google yourself to keep yourself humble.
You know, I'm going to stop doing that. I'm fine with the humility. You don't gotta keep me up. But yeah, no, that is.
So there you go. There's a quick example. You'll see more of it. Coming up next, Jaden and Will, and I think maybe even Heather Graham, are all going to try to sort of speak at the same time. And this is common. Somebody starts telling a story. People are like, oh my God, that reminds me of, or yeah. The difference in how they do it is that Will Smith finishes his sentence even though he is not ultimately being the one who continues to tell a story or share his point of view. Jaden raises hands in the air, tries to say what he's going to say, but does it quietly enough and with not enough conviction that he pauses halfway through his sentence and just sits there defeated. So watch this.
Something. You guys,
that'll get you really humble.
How does that keep you humble?
No, well, because people sort of often ask, you know, like how.
I'm going to play that again. All right. If you watched Will that time, watch Jaden. If you watch Jaden, watch Will this time. Things with Will is going to finish his sentence and then allow Bradley to continue to speak. Jaden says a phrase and then gets cut off, holds his hands in the air, and just flops him down.
With the humility, you don't gotta keep me up. But yeah, no, that is something. You guys,
that'll get you really humble.
How does that keep you humble?
No, the truth.
Well, because people sort of often ask, you know.
There you go. Right. So that is one big thing. Will says that'll get you really humble really quickly. And it's clear that Bradley still has more to say, so he allows him to continue. Jaden tries to get in there. And instead of finishing his sentence and then sort of saying, oh, no, go ahead, he just gets caught halfway through between what he's saying. And so right now he feels interrupted. He feels like he's not supposed to be speaking. He feels silly, like people have caught him. So watch the difference in how they active listen going forward. Jaden stays really quiet because he's been burned once trying to speak. And Will, on the other hand, is actively listening. He's saying, yeah, encouraging, which opens the door for him to jump in at the end and make a big joke.
Like, it's hard to stay grounded in this business, and I always find that to be such an odd question because to me it's the most humbling business there is. I mean, it's a business based on rejection, and the easiest form of it is just going on the internet.
But don't they just say you're cute and stuff?
So you hear Will Smith, yeah, yes, and now he's going to speak loudly because he has something to say, and he sees that there's sort of a seam in the conversation. People are trying to figure out where to go next.
Like, don't they say great things about you?
Will Smith, I liked him in Bad Boys, but he got some big-ass ears.
I'm going to play that again because there are a number of people vying to speak at that time, and Will Smith has just decided that he's going to crack his joke.
Cute and stuff? Like, don't they say great things about you?
Will Smith, I liked him in Bad Boys, but he got some big-ass ears.
That is all volume. I'm going to play it one more time at the risk of being redundant. Watch Bradley Cooper's and Heather Graham's head pop up as Will just continues talking in a loud tone of voice.
Going on the internet.
But don't they just say you're cute and stuff? Like, don't they say great things about you?
Will Smith, I liked him in Bad Boys, but he got some big-ass ears.
There's a thread out there that I read that told me I should get an ear transplant because my ears are too big.
So there you go. And again, Will Smith right here laughing super loud at the end of this. All of this is to say that when you're in a group conversation, one of the biggest things you can do is laugh loudly, speak loudly, because what happens with a lot of people is they find themselves getting cut off and do not know how to fit into a conversation. Now, that does not mean that you can dominate over other people. And what we're going to see here is what happens when somebody else is actually telling something. Will Smith starts to speak and then gets cut off. But he does it in a way that you'll see is going to be much more charismatic.
At my first date, this guy came to pick me up and he's wearing a half shirt. Now, I don't know about that style for men.
Worth highlighting again, biggest laugher.
I
It's kind of weird. A guy picks you up. He's like got a half shirt, a stomach, and then he was on his bike.
It's not a style for men.
Yeah, it's not really. So I was kind of freaked out. And then he had his bike, and I had to walk beside him while he was on his bike, and then we went to Taco Bell.
How long ago was this?
Like yesterday. No, it was when I was in high school. Or no, I was in maybe middle school or elementary.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. But still,
because that's, you know, the half shirt,
Have you ever worn a half shirt?
You have like a half shirt.
So everybody starts speaking at once, right? Will's starting to say something, but now people ask him and address him a question. This is why he gets interrupted, because 3 people are looking at him going, have you ever worn a half shirt?
In freshman,
I didn't have no
I remember that. It's like, right, it wasn't a half shirt.
It was a 3/4 shirt.
Yeah, it was a 3/4.
I didn't have one back then, too.
So this is much different than when we see Jaden get interrupted earlier. So play it back again.
Yeah, because that's, you know, the half shirt,
Have you ever worn a half shirt?
You have like a half shirt in freshman.
I didn't have no
I remember that. It's like, right, it wasn't a half shirt.
It was a 3/4 shirt.
Yeah, it was a 3/4.
I didn't have one back then, too.
It was a 7/8 shirt, a 7/8.
Again, a lot of people chiming in there, but because he is the loudest, and when he's interrupted, it's not just other people talking, it's them addressing a question to him, which is why he does get interrupted there. So I want to continue now and show another clip of sort of a free-for-all, if you will. Everybody's talking at the same time. How does it come down?
A penny board, and we'll go skate.
That's cute.
And then she'll go, I'll take her home, and I'll go home and watch.
Listen, I'm telling
how's that not a
you, here's what the women
That's
love.
kinda-
It's a day.
Here's what the women love. Half shirts and Taco Bell, man. I'm telling you, the women love that. It brings the house down.
So here's the thing. If you watch all of these clips, Will Smith is a very dominant and domineering force in these conversations, right? You might think, holy cow, I don't want to be in a room with him because I can't even speak. The way that he gets away with it, if you will, and is actually seen as people love it to interact with him is because, one, when he does interject, he's doing it from a high energy, playful mood, right? And what he has to say is almost always more fun and funny to engage with than what other people are saying. So that's going to be extremely important. The other thing is that he is extremely supportive of others when they tell their stories and when they make their jokes. So he's getting a lot of brownie points, if you will, while Bradley Cooper is talking or while Heather Graham is talking, because he laughs so loud, he's so supportive, he claps his hands, he says, that's amazing, that's awesome. So that when he does interrupt, it's not like, who is this guy coming out of nowhere trying to talk the whole time? He's been an active supporter of everything that they've said. So I'll play this part one last time, which is just Jaden faces Bradley Cooper and he starts asking him a question, but Will just sticks to what he's saying, says it twice so he gets the attention, and then continues loudly to make his joke.
I'll say, hey, I'll talk to a girl like, hey, let's hang out. I'll go buy her a penny board and we'll go skate.
That's cute.
And then she'll go, I'll take her home and I'll go home and watch.
Listen, I'm telling
how's that not a
you, here's what the women
That's
love.
kinda- it's a date.
Here's what
It's a
the
date.
women love. Half shirts and Taco Bell, man. I'm telling you, the women love that. It brings the house down.
It is amazing.
So I want to touch now on some frequently asked questions. By the way, if you have any questions that I did not get to in the course, write them in the comments. I'll either respond via text or periodically I'll update the course with videos like this. So the question goes like this. It's, okay, I've got this buddy, and he's very charismatic. You know, I've been learning a lot, and when I go into groups, I generally do well. But he comes in, and it's just like, bam, all eyes, all attention goes straight to him. Now, how do I deal with this kind of a situation? How do I remain charismatic presence when he is just such like the sun shining on people? Now, interestingly, this question had a subtitled Charisma versus Charisma. Now, if you're thinking it like that, of course, it becomes, okay, there can only be one winner, right? Either he's charismatic or I'm charismatic, and we have a winner and a loser. In fact, it's actually awesome when other people come into the group and they're extremely charismatic. One, it's people like this that I learned from, right? It's going out and watching these friends who just could captivate people, seeing how they stories, how they spoke, how they used their bodies and their voice and their eyes and everything else. That's how I learned. So one thing you can do is, one, just step back and observe. What are they doing? You might get insights that I haven't even touched on. But how do you remain charismatic? Say you don't want to go into passive listener observation mode. What do? You work with them, right? This is where the active listening section comes in so important. You got to be supportive of their jokes. If they're cracking jokes, you want to be the loud laugher. You want to be the person that yes ands, that piles on top of the jokes that they're making. When they're telling a story, give them your attention and your eye contact. So what happens is, say that it's that person and a group, what they're going to naturally do, as most people do, is gravitate towards the most active listener. You're going to start to get more of their attention. What happens here? It becomes almost like a dialogue between two people, and then the rest of the people honestly feel more like an audience. Yes, they interject, yes, they talk, but you are establishing yourself as a conversational leader just by being the preferred listener of the person who is speaking. So, very simply, you want to work with them. If they take conversation in the joking direction, don't try to like your charismatic dominance by taking it more serious. Build off of what they're doing. Yes, end them. They're doing serious stories. Let them tell with active listening, and then at the end you can pile on. Oh my God, I got to tell you guys, that reminds me of. Boom. They do build it, and that way you share the charismatic spotlight. So, the group interaction action guide. This one is going to be a little bit more difficult than some of the others. Why? Because every day you get a chance to make a first impression or practice confidence. It's not every day that you find yourself in an interactive group conversation. So as opposed to titling these Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, like I have for other modules, let's call them day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Work them in as best you can with your schedule. If you know that you're going to go out and be in a group interaction like a bar or a work setting or a social setting, that's perfect. Make this what you do. So first one has to do with group management. Now, we touched on this in some of the other courses. You really need to go back to it. It is so huge. You have to treat each individual in the group as an individual. If you address the group as a whole, they're lost to you. So, what do you do? First thing is, when you're introducing yourself to a group or joining or someone else is joining, your goal today is going to be to extend your hand and verbally say hi or introduce yourself, if you haven't met them yet, to every single person in the group. That's it. One other thing to add is that if you're speaking and you got a group of 3 people and a 4th person approaches and is sort of meekly standing on the outside, your job, whether you're talking or listening, is to bring them into the group. Say, hey, come on in. This is my friend, blank, blank, blank. Introduce them. We're just talking about, catch them up what you're talking about. And now you have built the group. The person who builds the group leads the group. So that's it today. Say hi to every single person when the group forms. Bring other people in. You need to be managing this group. That is it for day 1. So day 2, today is going to be a little bit of a study day, and it's important because we talked about finding the seam in the course, and it can be a fun theoretical exercise, but you need to go out and do it in your conversations. So today, you don't actually have to do anything. What I need you to do is sit back and watch a group interaction develop and find how people start to trade speaking roles, right? Are people jumping on the end of each other's sentences? Or is somebody waiting for that moment where somebody finishes and they know just, okay, this is the time to insert? And pay attention for those people like Jaden Smith, if you watch the video, who try to speak up and get shut down. What is it that they're doing? Are they like making shifty eye contact? Are they speaking too quietly? Are they not getting the attention of the person who's leading the group so that he sort of passes the torch onto them? Pay attention today to how people start to interject and assume the speaking role in group conversations. That's it. You're going to learn a ton just from doing this, and honestly, you'll probably see yourself in some of the mistakes that other people do. So that's it for today. Watch how people interject. See who is finding the seam of your group's friends, who is just piling on through sheer force of will, and who is getting shut down. And then you will know in the future how to be the person who is either, getting a strong interjection, finding the seam, and hopefully not just getting shut down. Day 3, this is one of my favorites. If you're not an outgoing person, if you struggle to be heard in groups, this day is huge. So today is all about not letting yourself get run off your conversational track. right? How do you not have someone just interject and you're mid-story and it's over? Well, that's going to happen, right? People are going to interject in your stories or say things, but they don't need to interject in the middle of your sentences. So today, it's best, honestly, if you can find a rowdy group. If you're going to a social event, that's ideal. Work tends not to be like this so much. Make sure that whenever you're talking, you get to a full stop, a period, if you were to like transcribe what you're saying before you get cut off. So if you're talking, you're saying, so whatever, I'm going to make this up, the quarterly earnings show, and somebody raises their hand and blurts out, wait a second, I thought we were going to go back. Don't let them just run you right off that sentence. Go, the quarterly earnings show that we made more this year than last year, even if they interrupt you in the middle of the sentence. You can come back, you can answer their question before like plowing forward with the presentation, but the simple act of finishing your sentences when people talk, it's incredible. Sometimes they'll just back off and you'll continue on with the thread that you were going. But other times, say that they do, they do take you in a different direction. The amount of respect that you gain from finishing your sentences communicates to other people that what you say has value. And I swear to God, just by doing this one thing, you can make them pay so much more attention. So do not let yourself get interrupted mid-sentence today. That's it. Rowdy groups are best, but whoever you can find to go practice this is going to be ideal. So day 4. Day 4 and day 5 are going to be two parts of a whole, and you need to see both sides of them. One, because some people have different preferences, and it's just good to see, okay, what's the right way for me? So what I want to work on today is telling a story to a group. But today I want you to focus on the most receptive individual. Because there's two ways to tell a story. If you can command the entire group's attention and just split it between people evenly, great. But as a warm-up, what we often have to do is we need to play to the person who's giving us the most feedback, right? The most eye contact, nods, active listening. And that way we start to rope other people who might be less engaged in. That's today. So if you've done the storytelling module, great, you can pick a story from that. But just in general, anything that serves as a story, if it has a beginning, a middle, a climax, and a denouement, or sort of the falling action, that's a story. It can take just a few sentences to do. But what I want you to do is think of something that you can share with somebody, or if you're off the cuff guy, more like me, go ahead and just do that. But thinking, okay, story time at some point in this conversation. Start telling it though, primarily to one person, right? So if you're in a group of 4, you can still include them, but pick the person who's going to be the easiest and the most receptive, right? And I want you to see how the other people interact. Sometimes they're going to join in even more, right? Because they get to feel like really excited audience members. Other times you might lose them to their own separate conversation as you focus on this person. Either way, it's a great learning experience. So focus on one person, tell them your story, give them the eye contact. Majority, you can still rope them in every now and then, but this is your go-to guy. Tomorrow, we're going to work in bringing the rest of the people in more evenly. Day 5. So I gave you a hint. In fact, I told you what today would be, but this is really the culmination of group interaction. Can you hold the attention of several different people at one given time? Can you make them all laugh on cue? Stories are the best way to do this because you can port them, right? You've told a story to one person, maybe you've told a story to one person in a group. Now you're trying to include as many people as possible in this story. So if you want, you can take the one that you told on day 4. If not, you can come up with a new one. But your goal today is going to be to tell a story in such a way that you rope everyone in the group in. How do you do that? I still recommend, unless you have like the attention is on you in the group. If you've got a lot of attention at the beginning, you can tell a story. But if there's still competing conversations, start with one person, start to tell it, and then begin to rope other people in. And you'll love this. So background, one sentence catch up, and now Tom is part of it. And you're going to try to bring that you're telling. Now, you don't have the luxury, as you were telling just one person, of looking at them for 90% of the time. You need to look over here, you're telling them the story, blah, 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 you're laughing, you're nodding, you get them engaged, they give you some feedback, maybe it's a nod, maybe it's a smile. You move on to the next person and you tell them whatever the second part of the story, and you get some feedback from them, you move on to the next person, and you can split it between them. Key things to keep in mind, because this is kind of a big day. The main goal is just to tell the story, right? That's it. You tell the story. You try to include a group of, try to include a group of people. You did it. But try to keep your eye contact and your focus on someone for enough time for them to give you feedback. If you just bounce between people and go like this, you never have anyone for enough time to tell them, hey, you're an important person to me. I would like you to be listening, or this is worthwhile for you to listen to. You need to speak for probably 5, right, on the shorter side as you're looking at something. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, boom, right? You can even go longer, but that's enough time for you to get one person and move through the group. So that's it. Try to engage an entire group today via a story. This is tough, and a lot of this group stuff is tough to practice because you don't always get the chance, and there's a lot of competing forces. But if you can do this, you are darn close to being like 95th percentile at managing group interactions. Most people can only chime in every now and then. If you can tell a story and captivate the attention of a group of people, you have got it. So that's it for day 5. Any questions? Add them in the comments. I can throw them into the FAQ. But for now, that is the action guide.